10 years ago, District 74 developed a strategy to grow to 250 clubs by 2016. At the time, District 74 had hit a plateau of between 120 to 130 active clubs every year for the previous 10 years or more. The key was to focus on the opportunities for new members, new target markets, and growth beyond the traditional markets for District 74. My name is Keith Bowen, and I chair the District Reformation Committee. This video is a short introduction to the work of the Reformation Committee as we prepare for the great event of creating 2 districts out of District 74. This growth has now been achieved. Sadly, not at the rate to achieve the target by 2016, but impressive growth nonetheless. With a consistent message around the benefits of Toastmasters to all, creating opportunities across Southern Africa, we have now reached, or very close to, the promised land. The target of 250 clubs was not an arbitrary decision. It represents a level at which it becomes feasible to transform into 2 districts. At 120 clubs in each of the districts, they become viable, creating an opportunity for growth, and even be able to grow from 120 to 240 clubs as District 74 did in just 10 years. But why do we have to grow into 2 districts at 250 clubs? What makes this the magic number? My colleagues on the committee will explain.
As far as we can remember, our region of 9 countries with many Toastmasters clubs has been managed under our beloved Toastmasters District 74. If you were the district director, would you do better supporting 100 or 200 clubs?
We are currently strained on the resources we have as districts to support existing clubs. As we continue to grow as a district, what could we do to improve the quality of support that district leaders give to clubs?
Currently, we have 1 speech contest winner representing over 200 clubs. After the Reformation, we will have 2 contest winners progressing to the next level. Double your chances.
Which is easier to do? Becoming a President's Distinguished Area or Division of a district with 100 clubs, or becoming a President's Distinguished Area or Division of a district with 200 clubs?
Don't you want to do away with that awkward situation where there are no leadership opportunities in an organization where leaders are made?
So in a nutshell, the capacity for a district to serve its clubs and members becomes constrained beyond 250 clubs, limiting opportunities for members and creating a distance between district and its members. The Reformation Committee has to consider a number of critical objectives when it comes to the boundaries of the new districts. Some of these have been established by the Board of Directors. Firstly, we should assess the growth opportunities in both districts to ensure that both are able to grow with equal opportunity and it is not a lopsided development into the future. Secondly, to assess the leadership capabilities in each of the districts. Is there sufficient leadership experience and active participation in both districts to provide the basis for future leaders? And also to assess the financial viability of each of the districts. And considering the size of our current district and the geographic spread of Southern Africa, it's important that travel budgets are consistent between the 2 and that we are not lopsided and creating an undue burden on one of the districts. The Reformation Committee also came up with some of its own objectives and guidelines for the Reformation. Countries outside of South Africa, other than South Africa, will be in only one of the districts, that we will not split the countries between them. The South African provinces, other than Gauteng, will also only be in one of the districts and not split between them. There is a reason why we focus and exempt Gauteng from that argument, and I'll discuss that in these following slides. Part of the function of the Reformation Committee is to provide analytical support for the decision making for the Reformation process. Here you can see in this slide the concentration of clubs in the Gauteng area. Each of these blocks represents the number of clubs in that particular area. So we have 15 in KwaZulu-Natal, 32 in the Western Cape, 6 Namibia, Botswana 8, Zimbabwe 17, Zambia 7, Malawi 5, and Mozambique 4, and Swaziland and Lesotho 1 each. And the idea here is that these are sort of where the clubs are concentrated, and to try and look at how would these clubs be allocated in a Reformation process. One of the tasks, as I mentioned earlier, is to look at the growth that has happened in some of the areas, which would have a huge impact on determining where those areas would be under the new districts. If we look, for example, we take it from 2011 through to 2020, the growth over each of these 3-year periods in the countries. So we start with Botswana, which in 2011 had 2 clubs, and it ended in 2020 at 8. Malawi, for a long time, had been at 3 clubs and has now shot up to 5 clubs. Mozambique, so also with 1 club for most of the last decade, and then suddenly shooting up in the last 3 years from 1 to 4 clubs. And Lesotho pretty much at 1 club throughout. In some of the other countries, you can see Zimbabwe starting 2011 with only 2 clubs, but ending off in 2020 with 17. And Namibia starting with 3 and ending off with 6. Zambia starting at 2 and ending off with 7. And Eswatini still at 1 club through the most of that decade. In South Africa, there's also been a lot of growth, particularly in Gauteng. We started off at 67 clubs and ending at 106. The Western Cape went from 24 to 32, and KwaZulu-Natal from 8 to 15. The other provinces have pretty much stayed steady, but also ending at 15 in 2020. And their point then is to look at this history of growth and try and assess where we think growth will be in the next 3 to 6 years, so that we're making sure that when we develop the new districts, that they each have the same ability to grow. As I mentioned, there is a concentration of clubs in the Gauteng area, but it's important to also understand why that should be. If we look at the geographic spread of clubs, District 74 has a huge area, and we have a very dispersed set of clubs from around Southern Africa. But another way of looking at it is to try and shift that from not looking at it geographically, but more from the economic aspects. So if we look at, let's call it the economic spread of District 74, if I turn every single one of these little blocks, we make up 250 blocks, sort of the number of clubs that we would need in district. South Africa would have 188. Of that, Gauteng 64. And this is purely from an economic output perspective, looking at the relative economies of each of the provinces and each of the countries as to how we can then expect, theoretically, the number of clubs in that area. So Gauteng, it's with having 64 blocks. We then have Namibia with 6, Botswana 10, Mozambique 10, Malawi 5, Zambia 10, Zimbabwe 16, Lesotho 2, Eswatini 2, and then for Southern Africa, we have Limpopo at 14, Mpumalanga at 14, also at 14, the Eastern Cape also at 14, the Free State at 10, the Northwest Province at 12, and the Northern Cape at 4. And then we have the Western Cape at 26 and KwaZulu-Natal at 30. Now, these obviously will not always necessarily mean that that's the exact number of clubs you're going to get in that part of the world, but generally economics would drive the growth of districts as much as anything else, if probably more than population or geography. So it's quite important to get an assessment of that. Clearly, you can see that in Southern Africa and in the provinces and in many other countries, these economies are also based on what we call primary sectors, so it's mining and agriculture. And the problem there is that those don't necessarily lend themselves well to a Toastmasters environment, particularly agriculture being very dispersed. It becomes a problem of trying to organize Toastmasters clubs in those sort of environments. Whereas in commercial environments, whether it be telecommunications, finance, those generally tend to lend themselves well to a Toastmasters environment, and which is why Gauteng is generally overrepresented, because even if we have mining houses across Southern Africa, often the head offices tend to be in Johannesburg or Pretoria, which means that there's a lot of clubs here, regardless of the economic growth. But it gives us a way to look at the spread across District 74 and assess where we think growth is likely into the future. One of the important things that we will be doing as part of the Reformation Committee is communicating more with our members. Over the next 2 to 3 months, you will expect to see more information being spread out, but also we would like to hear more from you. And to start off with, we have a generic email, reformation@toastmasters74.org, where you can post questions and suggestions, and we will then be able to process those. We're also developing a section on the district website where we will post frequently asked questions, as well as a Google form to allow members to start giving us suggestions or even proposals for the future Reformation and for how we would choose which clubs would then be part of which district. We also hope to provide some of the data, as I've indicated now, in terms of the growth and where the clubs are and how we see that happening over the next 3 to 6 years, as well as some of these maps, so that we're providing an information service as well as getting proposals from members across district. But what does the Reformation mean for its members? How are we going to be impacted as members once we are 2 separate districts?
You know that uncomfortable feeling of finding yourself trying to maneuver in a new environment, a new district. Yes. Have you imagined what it would be like trying to unlearn and relearn which district, division, area, or club you fall under?
Does this reformation mean Gauteng and Cape Town in South Africa as 2 provinces could be in separate districts after the reformation?
Could clubs currently in the same division be split into different districts?
Or maybe Zimbabwe and South Africa might also be separated as a result of this reformation.
Or could clubs even in the same town be split into different districts?
So will new divisions have to be created in each district?
Will District 74 assist and mentor the new district?
For these 2 districts, will they be equally financially viable, or one will be more financially viable than the other?
And still on that thought, could it mean that one district might remain with experienced leaders or another district remaining with inexperienced leaders?
And can I be a member of 2 clubs, one in either district? And if so, am I able to stand for election as a division director or cabinet member in both districts?
The Reformation process can be a daunting one, with many challenges and stumbling blocks. The repercussions for members and clubs are not trivial and require us to pay some attention to the process as it unfolds. But it is also an exciting opportunity for the district to establish 2 new entities, each which can flourish and develop into strong centres of leadership development.
If it's true that great things never come from comfort zones, then don't you think it would be a good idea for District 74 to get out of the comfort zone and do great things, like expanding into another district?
I'm on board. What can we do to assist the smooth transformation?
How can I, as a club member, assist District 74 in the Reformation process?